Strike three.
He shoots. He scores.
Welcome to another episode of Unemployed Commentators.
Howdy, partner.
Today we are talking about Rey Mysterio's first Cruiserweight Championship at WCW Monday Night Nitro in 1996, July 8th. That's the only time I needed notes.
1996 was a good year.
Yeah, we were 3 years old.
Was this the SummerSlam or what was this event?
Oh no, it was a Monday Night Nitro.
Monday, okay.
Yeah.
This is what's so fun about this one. So, like, we get to pick every week. If you guys didn't know this, I'll pick one week, John will pick the next episode. You know what I mean? So, my boy main event Poppy here just went through his own professional wrestling. Should I say experience or training? Like, you were performing, you were doing professional.
Yeah, it was an experience.
You have
for sure.
more of an insight now, I think, than you would have just as a fan now.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
I gotta take this off. It's bothering my breathing. I don't know how people wrestle in this, bro.
This is. Hey, make note of that. Put that up, baby. So wearing that luchador mask, you're like, I can't even make it so hot. That is like part of your identity as a luchador.
Yes.
Like, could you imagine that all the time? Like being on Kathy Griffin and having to wear that shit.
Bro, it sucks because, I mean, it doesn't suck. I think it's really honorable when people, like, really dedicate it. So, you know, like you said, I had the pro wrestling experience, and then, so I would work with luchadors. Some luchadors won't wear their lucha mask backstage. They're, like, normal people, and all of a sudden when they put their mask on, they're like, oh, you're that guy. So, like, they don't really introduce themselves, and then, boom, they put on the mask, and you already know who they are. Yeah. But a lot of people, especially in Mexico, that really take it serious, they put it on in the car and no one knows their identity, like when they walk into the locker room.
This is kind of cool because we got Rey Mysterio here. We were talking about, and we're going to be talking about that match with Dean Malenko, Man of 1,000 Holds.
Yes.
What is so important, and why do you think Rey Mysterio Jr. has become such an icon versus like other luchadors?
I think he just made luchadors more mainstream, especially in the WWE during 2002. He became like a fan favorite for like children. Especially, you know, if you put Rey Mysterio and you compare him to a superhero, who would you think? Mm-hmm. For me, it would be Spider-Man. Mm. So kids love Spider-Man. Hell, I love Spider-Man. Yeah. So he's small. He's 5'6". Well, he says he's 5'6". Mm-hmm. He's like 100. Now he's like 170 pounds because he's stocky as hell. But doing all these high flying moves, lucha libre moves that has been practiced for years in Mexico, especially in Mexico City and then Juarez. Like, lucha libre is huge. It's probably one of the biggest sports in the country. Mm. And I feel like he, especially during the 90s, before the 90s, during the 80s, cruiserweights or like light heavyweight wrestlers, smaller wrestlers weren't a thing, really. Mm-hmm. Like they were, but they were kind of viewed as like jokes. Mm-hmm. But then Paul Heyman in ECW brought those cruiserweights, like getting them from Japan and then Mexico and some in the States, and like because they're the only they're the type of wrestlers that can do those aerial moves or actual technical moves too. Like if you see some moves like Dean Malenko or Chris Benoit during those times, those are like realistic, like catch wrestling moves. Yeah. But then you have like the aerial performance and the acrobatics and gymnastics of lucha libre, and then WCW saw that, and then they bought those wrestlers. They got them contracts, and then kind of put them on the mainstream level on primetime TV for the first time.
Okay. And this one, in 96, we're going to talk about this specific match with Dean Malenko. What is so important about this match specifically?
I think it's just the first title win for Rey Mysterio before he became like a huge star. He was actually just part of the cruiserweights. And during WCW, during that whole cruiserweight boom, cruiserweights are kind of like the openers. Like in comedy, you have like the openers that people think like, oh, like this person has potential to be a star,
Yeah.
and then like the headliner.
Okay.
Well, cruiserweights were never really viewed as feature main eventers. They're cruiserweights, and then always going to be the openers. But sometimes, most of the times, when people watch those like primetime television shows, they have the cruiserweights, and a lot of the times people just kind of like turn it off right after because they're not going to see a match that's better than that.
Yeah. Fair. So with this one, did you watch this as a kid?
As a kid, I was like 3, so no.
3 or 4?
If I did, I was probably
I
not.
was curious. I remember watching like WCW and like getting the tapes at Blockbuster and stuff, and watching like SummerSlam and all that stuff. WWE, you're just always watching it, and it was every single week. On Monday, back and forth between the two. Vivid memories of watching those. So that's why I was curious.
Yeah, I was just like, let me find a huge Rey Mysterio match, and I was like, okay, this one.
Yeah.
But I feel like I like this one a lot because the styles are like it's the perfect like other side of the spectrum of like pro wrestling styles. Because you have Dean Malenko, who came from a pro wrestling family of catch wrestlers, and he actually like traveled with his father when he was a kid, along with his brother Joe Malenko, like everywhere. So like they were basically living in their car. And then you got the Mysterios, which Rey Mysterio Jr. is the nephew of Rey Mysterio Sr. And now you got Dominic Mysterio in WWE, who's just started probably like a couple of years ago, a few years ago.
The wrestling, I mean, like, there's a lot of things in the world that are like the family business. And I feel like professional wrestling is a lot like the circus in that way, where like you're like family entertainers. Like you've been doing it for years and years and years. Like my grandparents did this when they came over from Europe.
It's funny. I used to travel with this one wrestler, and he was showing me the ropes on like how to conduct yourself at in the locker room, how to dress, how to like you have to shake everyone's hand. Like there's all these like phrases and words that you have to remember as well. And it's funny because like when you're in the locker room, sometimes they have like chips, food, sodas, waters, right? And the person I was with had an empty suitcase, and I always wondered why. He opened it, and he put everything, like he just gets like handfuls and armfuls, actually. And then he looks at me, he's like, you gotta be carny, bro. You gotta be carny. It's 10 hours on the road. You gotta be carny. You don't want to spend a dime. You want to make money.
Yeah.
I was like, shit, okay.
Pretty interesting. Yeah, it's the life of the road, too. It's very... I feel like pro wrestlers probably have more in common with comedians and people than most would think, I think. Or like you said, circus performers and everything else. So.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah. So what else about this match I think that our people should know, too, contextually? Like, what else?
So, Dean Malenko, like I said, he has like a catch wrestling style. He's the man of 1,000 holds. So, I was actually watching a video of MMA on Point about Japanese MMA and how a lot of the fights were worked.
Yeah.
And if it wasn't for like catch wrestling, jiu-jitsu wouldn't exist, MMA wouldn't exist, or pro wrestling wouldn't exist, or even freestyle wrestling. So, what I like about Dean Malenko's style is that he's kind of like a martial artist, where he kind of like use his art as like an exhibition and not hurting his opponents, but showing like, hey, these techniques work. So you see him doing suplexes, abdominal stretches, very like ground-based grappling, and then you have Rey Mysterio doing, of course, lucha libre moves like banderas, quesadoras, jumping on the ropes. And to tell you the truth, bro, after training that, I admire it a lot more because that is exhausting. It's probably the hardest thing I've ever done.
I bet. I was going to say, like, the high-flying stuff and the acrobatics, like, the kind of shape you have to be in. And I think the last time I went to a professional wrestling event, like, watching the Vikings on TV and seeing them do backflips and front handsprings, and they're big men.
Yeah, dude, those are only Vikings.
So, I mean, like, I definitely see, just as a casual professional wrestling fan now, how much Rey Mysterio has influenced everything, too.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
I think even the high flyers before then, it was like, I mean, like, what was it, Hulk Hogan with his elbow, or the Randy Savage with the elbow.
That's Macho Man. Yeah.
And then Hulk Hogan with his like atomic leg drop. That was
Yeah.
the extent of it. You know what I mean? Like, it wasn't crazy.
Or like Ricky the Dragon Steamboat and like Owen Hart, but like they were like very basic, like, you know, moonsaults or just crossbodies, and then you got luchadors doing like diving hurricanranas, and it just changed the game completely for like modern day pro wrestling.
So what happened in this match too? What's important about it?
I like to dissect it, and I'm going to dissect it in a way where so you understand the mechanics of pro wrestling and how it's shaped. So in a pro wrestling match, there's a script. It starts with an intro, where of course who is the good guy, who's the bad guy, and you can tell by the body language that is expressed during the match. So you obviously saw that Dean Malenko is the bad guy. The way he carries himself, how he kind of like, he's very aggressive. And then Rey Mysterio, good guy, underdog, high-flying moves. And that's where the shine comes in. So after the intro is the shine, and that's where Rey Mysterio does like all his high-flying moves, you know, crazy like stunts. And then there's the cutoff. And that's where Dean Malenko cuts him off and then works heat. So the heat is where you start, like, you know, like the boring part of the match. The bad guy is just talking shit to the crowd.
Yeah.
He's going to start, like, doing slams. And you saw him doing, like, all those suplexes beautifully. And you can tell he's been training since he was a kid, because a guy in his 30s don't usually bridge like that now. Then comes the hope spot. So you see Rey Mysterio. I forgot how he countered it, because we're not watching the match right now, so I'm like playing this by memory from like a couple of years ago. So he probably cut off, probably did some like crazy arm drags, and when he was about to do like the big move, he gets the second cut off, and then there's the heat again. So then that's why it's like the hope spot. It gives you so much hope, and you're like, oh, Rey Mysterio's going to finally win it. Then after the second heat comes it was after the second heat, of course, comes the comeback. And, of course, usually a comeback's like 3 moves, like one clothesline. Like, you can tell what's the comeback when Hulk Hogan is a good example. Gets hit. And he starts shaking, right? Like, shaking his fist. The crowd gets behind him, gets hit again. And he acts like surprised that he got hit again. Yeah. The crowd's going wild. Woo! Then he gets hit the third time, and he goes like, he points. The bad guys, the heels, like, and then the comeback is where Hulk Hogan goes like, clothesline, body slam, and then he goes for the atomic drop. And then, let's say if it was a modern day match, the person would just kick out at 2, and people are like, no! And that's called the falsie.
Yeah.
And there's usually like 3 falsies in a good match.
Okay.
And then when you're in a match, and this is where you see like a bunch of falsies with Dean Malenko and Rey Mysterio at the end, because I really like the ending here, because it looked like a surprise. It was a surprise. Dean Malenko was like, if he countered, I think, Rey Mysterio's frog splash, and then Dean Malenko was about to like do like a suplex until Rey Mysterio just did basically he likes to call it the what was it? It wasn't the so basically it's kind of like a Hurricanrana pin, and he 1, 2, 3 shocking win, boom, like, and because he was such an underdog, and most of the time championships don't change hands on like shows.
Yeah.
Now is more than often, especially with AEW now and WWE. Now they're competitive, and now wrestling's actually getting good again. But with Rey Mysterio doing that on a Monday Night Raw, it would actually make you like a Monday Night Raw. Monday Night Nitro makes you want to tune in.
Yeah.
So now it's not as predictable as people think.
Yeah.
And during that time, it was really like at the height of the Monday Night Wars, where it was competitive between the ratings for Monday Night Raw and then Monday Night Nitro.
Yeah.
And then that didn't happen for like probably 2 decades until boom, back to AEW and WWE. Now they're doing that again because now they're competitive, and now wrestling's good again.
Yeah. So I feel like there's always like the summer events and everything too. Like every time I check like WrestleMania, I think the past decade, it'd be like a celebrity was coming in with a big
Yeah.
draw, like Floyd Mayweather against the Giant.
Oh yeah, Big Show.
Yeah, and it was
Yeah.
like, he's undefeated across all that. You know?
Yeah. My favorite celebrity match was obviously Bad Bunny, and it's not because I'm a huge Bad Bunny fan. I just didn't think he was way better than most wrestlers, dude.
Dude, I think like when David Arquette won the championship and like did the movie Let's Get Ready to Rumble, and I loved that movie as a kid.
Me too.
Like,
I still
didn't
love
think
it.
as a kid I was like, yeah, that's cool. Anybody can come into the WCW and win.
I will win.
I was like, dude, one day I'll win the championship. I could just go and win it. Like I can jump into the ring as a kid. That was my
Yeah.
belief, dude.
Dude, that's amazing.
You know?
I thought the same thing too, especially watching like Eddie Guerrero
Yeah.
and Rey Mysterio. I was like, oh, I can do that.
Yeah, you're like, anybody can do this. Sweet.
Yeah, and then I realized it's so fucking hard.
Yeah.
It's so hard, especially the road life. I think it's even harder.
I feel like I get this impression, and we've talked about like the dark side of things, or like what do you love so much you're willing to eat the shit sandwich of? You know, so like part of that is like, do you love wrestling enough to live the road life, to risk the body injuries, to be a jobber, or like just be the opener the rest of your life, and that kind of stuff. Like, how much do you love wrestling? And that's a tough question, I think.
Yeah, for sure. And it's like, but dude, once you get in there, it's so much fun.
Oh, I bet.
It's like the energy is just mesmerizing.
Yeah.
And when I wrestled Hobo Hank, who was on Vice on that documentary, and I had to be like a bad guy, and I had like Satan as my manager, dude. It was like the most fun I had, and I was like, when they told me I was losing, I was like, hell yeah, Hobo, let's do this, this, and that, this, and this. And I think the funny part was because like Hobo Hank body slammed me, and of course my back is hurting, and it was a body slam on like grass. That shit hurt, bro. And the ring already hurts enough. On the ground, I was like, what the fuck? And I pulled my sciatica, too, that week. So my right leg's tingling still from that. And then getting slammed on top of it, I was like, all right, we're good. And then I felt a kick really hard on my back. And I was like, whoa. And I thought it was Hobo. And I looked and turned and looked. I looked behind me, and it was a little girl who kicked like a fucking mule, bro.
Wow.
And then her little sister's just pouring Sprite on me. And I was like, what the hell? And like, of course I had to act mad, but back in my mind I was like, that's why I'm doing it. They're going to remember that for the rest of their lives.
No shit.
Yeah, dude.
That's pretty remarkable, too. So, Rey Mysterio wins the championship on Monday.
Yeah.
And you said this just makes like him a mainstream star in America, right?
Yeah, for
So
sure.
what happens after that?
So, just even talking about Rey Mysterio, he wrestled basically in 5 different decades. He started wrestling in 1989 under the name Culebri, which is Little Hummingbird, until Rey Mysterio Sr. said he could use the name. And then, of course, in the 90s, during like WCW, ECW, and then he won his Cruiserweight Championship, his career was like getting like hot. Like he was becoming like a huge star at the point while they gave him a WCW Heavyweight Championship opportunity. But because a lot of like backstage politics, a lot of the times with like Kevin Nash, he was like one of like the big guys there. He made Rey Mysterio lose and then get unmasked if he loses. So then, of course, Rey lost, and then they unmasked him. And I feel like that's what kind of slowed down his career in WCW. Like, he had, like, this cholo hip-hop gimmick for a bit. And then until WCW got bought out by WWE, he was working the independents. And he had a really good match against CM Punk and Eddie Guerrero in a local, I think it was Ring of Honor if I'm not mistaken, but a local independent show. Dude, if you can find that match was outstanding. I remember in middle school in my computer class just watching it, acting like if I was paying attention. After that, that's when he got his WWE contract in 2002. Which it was funny because I was a kid living in Hinesville, Georgia, and he didn't debut on TV yet, but he was on one of the house shows. So I was there, like in Savannah, Georgia, and before he debuted, and I saw him wrestle against, I think it was Billy Gunn.
Badass.
And I was like, wow. Yeah, but he was doing that whole like gay marriage gimmick at that time with Chuck Palumbo.
Billy Gunn was, or Rey Mysterio?
Yeah.
I don't even know what that is. What was it?
So Billy Gunn was in a tag team called Billy and Chuck, and they acted like if they were like. So they walked out with like this Backstreet Boys entrance music. I really want everyone who's listening to this to like check it out. And their manager was this guy named Rico, and he was like a fashionista. And he wanted Chuck Palumbo and Billy to like marry each other as a tag team. Yeah. So of course, how like WWE and like just wrestling fans, how homophobic they were during like the early 2000s.
Yeah.
People were booing them because they're like, "Boo, they're gay." So it's kind of like the Texas crowd now, but
I feel like that was Billy Gunn's like "Kiss My Ass" shtick, or he was perfect for the Attitude Era and Val Venus. I remember. Do you remember when they threatened? They brought Val Venus in the back room, and it was like they're threatening to cut his dick off. Like I was watching it, it's so bonkers.
And you know what?
Part of pro wrestling. Like as a 6-year-old kid, you're like, oh, I could just watch this.
So you're seeing a porn star who's getting their dick cut off by the Yakuza, basically. Dude. And I'm 6 years old. Like, what are they cutting off? Like, I don't understand what's going on.
Yeah, I had no idea, but I was like, oh, this looks scary.
And it's funny because Billy Gunn, that was after he was the Mr. Ass Billy Gunn, who was badass Billy Gunn. And now in AEW, he's called Daddy Ass Billy Gunn.
Very cool.
So, anyways, back to Rey Mysterio. Yeah. During the 2002, he made debut, and he had like a bunch of great matches with Jamie Noble, who also has like a catch wrestling style, very technical wrestler. I feel like he was very underrated in the WWE anyways, but he got his Cruiserweight Championship there, and dude, he was having like a lot of momentum. Great matches with like Matt Hardy, Eddie Guerrero, obviously, tag team with Edge at a point, and he was on fire. And then during 2005, Eddie Guerrero and him were tag team champions, but Eddie wanted a match with him in WrestleMania. And that was in WrestleMania 21. No. WrestleMania 21. And it was the first time where two tag team champions went against each other. So they wrestled, and of course Ray won, and that's when made Eddie Guerrero have like a heel turn. Which, if you don't know what that means, it means when a babyface who's a good guy turns into a bad guy, heel. And I found out like later when I was about to leave pro wrestling why it's called that. And it's because the babyface always shows their face on the camera on that side of the ring, and the heels always have their back turned to the camera. So you see their heels. Okay.
Interesting.
And I was...
Never knew that. I just always thought it was like you're like the heel, you're like the foot of the organ.
Yeah.
That's
what I thought too.
Yeah. That's interesting. All right, makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, and then in 2006, after Eddie Guerrero passed away, they kind of put him in a storyline, just Eddie Guerrero's passing, and Kurt Angle was the heavyweight champion. Rey Mysterio won the Royal Rumble that year, and of course Randy Orton did a promo saying like, you know, Eddie Guerrero is not looking up, like looking down at you from heaven, he's looking up to you in hell, like, and people are like, ooh, and of course 12-year-old me is like, fuck Randy Orton, and so this was in WrestleMania 22, and Rey Mysterio became, I think he is still to this day, the smallest world heavyweight champion in WrestleMania 22. So it like literally that moment in time broke like standards and just not even broke standards. It's just kind of like it really broke down walls for smaller wrestlers to become world champions. So you wouldn't see Daniel Bryan winning a championship or considered like a world champion in general or a legend that he is. You wouldn't see like other smaller pro wrestlers if it weren't for Rey Mysterio. And that style that he wrestles influenced so many independent wrestlers now that even changed the game. Nobody want to watch those big dudes lifting people up and just doing slams all the time. And I feel like they need to bring some of that back because we do need a balance in pro wrestling. But now it's like if you can't keep up with like your cardio and your like technique and just like high flying maneuvers or just even being a good grappler, like you won't survive in pro wrestling just as long. But also you have to understand to like you have to tell a story, and I feel like that's what's missing out too.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, dude. So what are some closing thoughts you have about this?
I think Rey Mysterio is probably top 10 for sure pro wrestlers of all time, just for breaking barriers the way he did. I felt like he carried on the legacy for Eddie Guerrero. If Eddie Guerrero was still alive, I think he would accomplish as much as Rey Mysterio did. Mm-hmm. Eddie Guerrero was the smallest before Rey Mysterio at 5'8", but he was still over like 200 pounds. But I think Rey Mysterio, a lot of pro wrestling that we're watching today wouldn't exist without him.
Interesting. Hey, I think that's important too, is understanding like how his impact on professional wrestling as a whole, not just WWE or WCW, but just across the game worldwide. I think one of the lasting things, the thing I want to close out, and we will have a whole episode about this, Eddie Guerrero, Rey Mysterio, fighting for custody of Dominic. I think that
I am so down for that episode.
Craziest shit, I think, ever. And I feel like just me, like I always love like the like people like Mike Tyson or whatever. They get into pro wrestling, Dennis Rodman, right? And they're just doing Like, I love those gimmicks so much because to me, people are like, I love the technical stuff. I'm like, dude, the batshit crazy stuff, like Donald Trump and Vince McMahon shaving head.
And Bobby Lashley, Denver's own Bobby Lashley.
Yeah, dude, like I absolutely love that stuff. So like his impact in that and like doing that crazy shit. Thank you so much.
Eddie Guerrero gave us that one gift before he left.
Thank you, Eddie and Ray. So hey, thank you guys for listening to this episode of Unemployed Commentators. Be sure to subscribe to the channel and check us out on all streaming platforms, guys. If you guys want to hear us talk about a specific sports character or a specific sports moment, make sure you put it in the comments. We will respond to it. We will do it.
Damn right.
All right. Thanks for listening, guys.